The morning was bright and the sun was just starting to warm the small town. A gentle breeze moved through the streets, carrying the smell of fresh bread from the bakery and the faint scent of blooming flowers nearby. The park at the edge of town was quiet, except for the sounds of birds singing and a few distant cars passing by. In this peaceful setting, a young boy walked slowly, holding a small paper bag tightly against his chest. The bag had been his treasure for the day. Inside was food he had saved up for, a simple meal that meant a lot to him. The boy had been excited since the morning. He had managed to save every penny he could, carefully counting coins and bills until he had enough. Today, he thought, he would finally get his favorite sandwich and a small drink. It wasn't much, but it was his treat, a reward for his hard work and patience. He could almost taste the sandwich, imagining the bread soft and warm, the filling just right, and the drink cool and refreshing. As he walked through the park, he noticed other children playing. Some were on swings, laughing and pushing each other, while others were running around with balls or flying kites. The boy felt a little out of place but didn't mind. His world for the moment was just him and his food. He found a bench under a large tree, where the sun created a patchwork of light and shadow on the ground. Sitting there, he placed the paper bag beside him and took a deep breath, ready to enjoy his meal. Unbeknownst to the boy, trouble was not far away. A group of bikers had been riding through the streets, their engines loud and intimidating. The bikers were known around town for their rude behavior and rough manners. They often caused fear wherever they went, and the local people had learned to avoid them. On this particular morning, they were restless, looking for something or someone to pick on. Their leather jackets creaked as they parked their bikes near the park entrance, and their laughter echoed in the quiet surroundings. The boy didn't notice them at first. He was too absorbed in imagining the taste of his sandwich, but soon he felt a strange sense of being watched. He looked up and saw the bikers staring at him from a distance. They were tall, muscular, and wore expressions that made the boy uneasy. His stomach tightened, not from hunger anymore, but from a rising fear he couldn't quite explain. Something about the way they looked at him made his skin crawl. One of the bikers stepped closer, his boots crunching against the gravel path. He leaned against a tree, crossing his arms, and smirked at the boy. The boy tried to look away, hoping they would lose interest, but the bikers didn't move. They began to laugh, a harsh, mocking sound that made the boy flinch. He hugged his paper bag closer, trying to protect it as if it were a shield. The leader of the bikers, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, walked up to the boy slowly. He crouched slightly to be at eye level and said something in a low, menacing tone. The boy couldn't understand every word, but the meaning was clear. They wanted his food. His heart raced and he felt trapped. He didn't know what to do. He looked around, hoping someone would help, but the park seemed empty except for the bikers and himself. The boy's hands shook as he tried to hold the paper bag tighter. He thought about running, but the bikers had blocked the path to the street. He considered yelling for help, but his voice felt small and useless against their imposing figures. The fear in his chest grew heavier with every second. He felt a lump in his throat, tears welling up, but he forced them back. He didn't want to cry in front of them. As the tension grew, the bikers moved closer, their laughter becoming louder and more mocking. One of them reached out, almost touching the bag, and the boy instinctively pulled it closer to himself. The paper bag crinkled under the pressure, making a small, alarming sound. The boy froze, wishing he could disappear, wishing he had wings to fly away from this nightmare. Just when the situation seemed unbearable, a sudden presence was felt. A man walked along the path nearby, unaware of what was happening at first. He was tall, strong, and moved with confidence that seemed to fill the air around him. His eyes caught sight of the boy and the bikers, and something inside him shifted instantly. He understood the danger without being told. The boy didn't notice him yet, too focused on protecting his food, but the man was watching carefully, assessing the situation. The bikers were growing bolder. They laughed again, and one of them reached for the bag. The boy squeezed it tighter, his knuckles turning white. He whispered a small, shaky please under his breath, hoping it would make a difference, hoping it would make them stop. But the bikers ignored him, their focus only on the food and the thrill of intimidation. The man who had noticed them earlier slowed his pace, watching the scene unfold. He didn't rush in or shout, but there was a calm authority in his stance. He knew that sometimes just being present could change things. He took a few more steps forward, and the bikers finally noticed him. For a brief moment, they hesitated, unsure if he was someone to be challenged or ignored. The boy glanced up and saw the man. His heart skipped a beat. There was a strange comfort in seeing a friendly face, even if he didn't know who it was yet. He felt a tiny spark of hope, fragile but alive, that maybe he wouldn't have to face this alone. The bikers, however, were not impressed. They shrugged, thinking the man was just another stranger who wouldn't interfere. The leader of the bikers leaned closer to the boy and said something with a cruel smile. The boy's stomach churned, but he held his ground, gripping the bag as if it were the most important thing in the world. The tension between the boy and the bikers seemed almost unbearable. The air felt thick, heavy with fear, and the sound of the breeze and birds seemed to fade, replaced by the bikers' laughter and the boy's heartbeat. The man took another step closer. Now the bikers could clearly see him, and there was a shift in the atmosphere. They stopped laughing for a moment, looking him over, trying to decide if he was worth their attention. The boy watched silently, hoping that this man could help, praying that he would. The bikers exchanged looks, and the tension held, frozen in that moment. The boy clutched the paper bag tightly, feeling it against his chest like a small treasure that needed protection. He realized that someone was there who might be able to help him, and for the first time since the bikers had approached, he felt a flicker of safety. It was small, but it was enough to steady his hands slightly and calm the rapid beating of his heart. The man stood still for a moment, simply observing. He didn't rush, didn't shout, but the boy could feel the change. It was like a quiet shield forming between him and the danger. The bikers, noticing the change in the man's presence, began to shift uncomfortably. They looked at each other, unsure if this stranger was someone they should challenge. The boy's hope grew with each passing second. He felt that maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't have to give up his hard-earned meal. He felt a strange sense of courage, tiny but growing, knowing that he was no longer completely alone. The bikers were still there, still menacing, but the situation was no longer entirely in their control. And so, the morning continued, tense and uncertain, with the boy clutching his treasure, the bikers looming, and the man approaching steadily. Each second stretched, every sound amplified in the quiet park, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The story of fear, courage, and unexpected help had begun, and the boy's life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The boy's heart was racing so fast it felt like it might burst from his chest. The paper bag containing his treasured meal was still clutched tightly in his hands. The bikers were standing close, smirking, their eyes cold and full of mischief. One of them stepped forward, his shadow falling over the boy. He reached out as if to take the bag, and the boy instinctively pulled it closer, his small body trembling. The boy's stomach churned with fear, and he felt his knees weaken. The bikers began laughing, loud and harsh, enjoying the fear they were causing. The leader of the group sneered down at the boy. His voice was low and threatening, telling the boy to give up his food. The words themselves were cruel, but it was the tone, the menace, and the smirk that made the boy feel trapped. He shook his head, refusing, but his voice was too small to be heard over the laughter. He felt frozen, unsure of how to protect himself. A sudden gust of wind blew through the park, rustling leaves in the trees. The boy tried to focus on something else, anything to calm his racing thoughts. He noticed the bark on the tree he was sitting under, rough and brown. He tried to count the cracks in the bark to distract himself, but the biker's laughter kept breaking his concentration. He could feel tears forming, but he blinked them away. He refused to cry in front of them. The leader reached closer and tapped the paper bag, causing it to crinkle. The sound made the boy jump, and he hugged it tighter. "Just give it here," the biker said again, his tone sharp and commanding. The boy shook his head and whispered, "No." His small voice was barely audible, but it carried his defiance. He didn't want to give up what he had worked so hard for. Every penny, every bit of effort he had put into saving this food mattered. He felt a surge of desperation, but also a flicker of courage, just enough to make him resist. The other bikers started circling him slowly, their movements deliberate, like predators stalking prey. The boy could feel their presence from all sides. His chest tightened, and he felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to scream, to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. Each time he moved, one of the bikers would take a step closer, blocking his escape. His mind raced with fear, imagining that he might lose everything he had saved. As this tense scene unfolded, the man who had noticed the situation earlier moved closer. He was tall and broad, walking calmly, yet his presence commanded attention. The bikers finally noticed him, and their expressions shifted slightly, though they still tried to act intimidating. They did not know this man, but something in his confident, steady stride made them pause. The boy, seeing the man approaching, felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps he would not have to face this alone. The leader of the bikers looked at the man, measuring him. He straightened his back, trying to appear even more intimidating. "Who's this?" one of the bikers asked, though the question seemed more for reassurance than curiosity. The leader didn't answer immediately. He was sizing up the new presence, trying to decide if it was worth the trouble or not. The boy tried to focus on the man, hoping that he would step in and help. He didn't know the man, but something about his calm confidence gave him a tiny sense of safety. His hands, still gripping the paper bag, trembled slightly less than before. It was just enough to give him hope that maybe he could protect his food. The bikers, still smirking, didn't make any sudden moves. They thought they had control of the situation, but the arrival of the man had changed something. He didn't need to yell or rush. His steady presence alone created tension. The boy could feel a shift in the air, a subtle change that made the bikers hesitant. The man continued to watch carefully, observing each movement, ready to act if necessary. The boy's mind raced. He tried to imagine a way to get away, but the bikers had formed a loose circle around him. He could feel the weight of their gaze, the pressure of their presence. He whispered again, almost to himself, "Please don't take it." It was not just about the food anymore. It was about feeling safe, about standing up against something that felt wrong. The bikers laughed again, dismissing his words, but the man's eyes never left them. The leader leaned closer to the boy, his face only inches away. The boy flinched but held firm, his grip on the bag unwavering. "It's just food," the leader said, his voice taunting. "Why are you being so stubborn?" The boy didn't answer. He couldn't find the words. All he could do was hold his treasure, hoping that someone would come to his aid. He felt a strange mix of fear and determination. He had saved this for himself, and he wasn't ready to give up. The man took a few more steps forward, and the bikers noticed. Now there was no denying him. He was closer, his posture steady and commanding. The boy looked at him, feeling a bit safer, as if this man could somehow protect him. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to respond. They had been used to intimidating others, but this presence felt different. It carried a quiet strength, a sense of moral authority that made them hesitate. The boy's mind tried to hold on to hope. He remembered the mornings he had saved coins, the afternoons he had worked quietly to earn small rewards. He thought about his parents, who had always taught him to stand up for what is right and never give in to fear. Now he realized that he was trying to follow that lesson, even though he was scared. He gripped the paper bag tighter, feeling a little braver with each passing second. The leader of the bikers seemed frustrated. He tapped the bag again and tried to grab it, but the boy pulled it closer to himself. The other bikers circled slowly, trying to intimidate him from different angles. The boy's breathing grew heavier, but he didn't give up. He had to protect what was his. In that moment, his fear and courage were intertwined, creating a tense, fragile balance. The man took one more step forward, stopping a few feet from the boy and the bikers. He didn't speak, but his presence alone was enough to make the bikers pause. The boy could feel the weight of his gaze, calm yet strong, watching the scene unfold. He didn't know the man's name, but he felt a strange sense of trust and protection. It was as if this man was silently telling him, "You are not alone." The bikers looked at each other again, confusion and frustration crossing their faces. They had expected fear, compliance, or panic, but the boy had held his ground and the man had stepped into the scene. Their laughter faded slightly, replaced by uncertainty. They didn't know how to react to this unexpected challenge. The boy felt his hope grow. He was still scared, still trembling, but he felt that maybe he could keep his food. Maybe he could survive this encounter without giving in. The man remained still, ready to act if necessary, and the bikers seemed to realize that this was no ordinary situation. The power dynamic had shifted, even if subtly, and the boy could feel it. Time seemed to stretch in the park. Every sound was amplified. The rustling leaves, the distant cars, the quiet footsteps of the man, and the soft, shaky breathing of the boy. Each second was heavy with tension, uncertainty, and anticipation. The bikers were still there, still menacing, but they were no longer completely in control. The boy clutched his bag tightly, feeling that his courage and the man's presence were enough for now to hold them at bay, and so the scene remained. a delicate balance of fear, bravery, and quiet strength. The boy's small hands on the paper bag, the biker's uncertain stance, and the man's calm presence created a story that was unfolding in real time, a story of innocence threatened, courage tested, and the promise of help arriving when it was needed most. The morning had grown warmer, the sunlight streaming through the trees, and the boy held on, waiting, hoping, believing that somehow things would be okay. The man stepped closer, his eyes never leaving the bikers. There was a calmness in him that was hard to explain. He moved slowly but confidently, his posture straight and commanding. Each step he took seemed to draw attention, and the air around him felt charged with quiet authority. The bikers noticed the shift immediately, sensing that this was no ordinary stranger. The leader, who had been trying to intimidate the boy, frowned and glanced at his companions. There was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes that had not been there before. The boy felt a surge of hope. He looked at the man, realizing that he might actually have someone on his side. His hand still clutched the paper bag, but the trembling had lessened slightly. He watched as the man stopped a few feet away, standing between him and the bikers without any need to speak. The presence alone seemed enough to create a barrier, a shield against the threat. The boy felt a strange sense of relief, like a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders, even if only a little. The leader of the bikers took a step forward, trying to reassert control. He smirked and said something. His voice meant to intimidate, but it didn't have the effect he intended. The man remained calm, his eyes steady, his expression serious but not angry. He didn't rush or shout. He simply stood there, making it clear that he would not back down and that he would protect the boy if necessary. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances. They had been used to fear, to control, to making others submit. But this situation was different. They were facing someone who did not flinch, someone who exuded strength without aggression. Their confidence wavered slightly, though they tried to mask it with forced laughter and gestures. The boy could sense the change too, and it made his heart beat a little easier. For the first time since the bikers had approached, he felt that maybe he could keep his meal safe. The leader took another step closer, and the boy instinctively moved slightly back, still holding the paper bag tightly. The man noticed this and subtly shifted his stance to cover more space between the boy and the bikers. It was a small, almost imperceptible movement, but it spoke volumes. The boy felt protected, as if the man's very presence was a shield he could hide behind. One of the bikers, younger and less experienced, tried to make a joke, thinking it would lighten the mood. He laughed loudly and waved his hand, but the attempt fell flat. The man's eyes met his, and the boy could see a seriousness there that made the biker stop in his tracks. The energy in the park had changed. What had started as an easy target for the bikers was no longer simple. They were beginning to realize that this man would not allow them to succeed without consequences. The boy took a small breath, feeling the tension ease just slightly. He looked at the bikers and noticed their hesitation. They were unsure of what to do next. The leader growled under his breath, trying to regain control, but the effect was diminished. The boy, though still scared, began to feel a sense of courage. He understood that he was no longer completely alone and that someone was willing to stand up for what was right. The man finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. He didn't yell or threaten, but the words carried weight. He told the bikers to step back, to leave the boy alone. It was a simple command, but it had an authority that demanded respect. The bikers looked at each other, confusion and frustration crossing their faces. They weren't used to being told what to do, especially not by someone who didn't seem afraid of them. The leader tried to speak, to push the situation further, but the man held his gaze. There was no anger, no malice, just a quiet, unwavering resolve. The boy watched closely, amazed at the man's confidence. He had never seen anyone stand up to the bikers in this way. It was inspiring and reassuring. He could feel a sense of safety starting to take hold, though the tension had not yet fully disappeared. The bikers shifted uneasily. They could feel the eyes of the man on them, assessing their every move. Each of them wanted to appear tough, but they were beginning to realize that this was no ordinary confrontation. The boy noticed the subtle changes in their posture, the hesitation in their gestures. It gave him a strange mixture of hope and fear. He knew the situation was still dangerous, but he also knew that the man was not going to let them win easily. The leader of the bikers took a deep breath, trying to regain control. He waved his hand dismissively as if to challenge the man to act. But the man did not move aggressively. He remained calm, steady, and resolute. The boy could feel the shift in power. It was no longer about the bikers taking what they wanted. It was about respect, about understanding that courage and moral authority could stand against intimidation. The boy watched as the man subtly adjusted his stance, keeping the bikers at a distance. He realized that the man was not just protecting him physically but also emotionally, giving him the courage to hold on to his treasure. The boy clutched the paper bag a little tighter, feeling a small surge of confidence. He was still scared, but he understood that fear did not have to control him. He had an ally, and that made all the difference. The bikers grew increasingly frustrated. They had not anticipated resistance, and certainly not from a stranger who had appeared out of nowhere. Their attempts to intimidate the boy now seemed futile. They exchanged glances, trying to figure out a plan, but the boy could see the uncertainty in their eyes. The man's presence was a silent challenge they were not ready to meet. The boy began to notice small details around him. The sunlight filtering through the trees, the sound of birds, the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. Normally, these would have gone unnoticed, but in the midst of fear, they became anchors grounding him in reality. He realized that the world was not just fear and danger. There was still beauty, still hope, and now someone to help him navigate the threat. The man spoke again, calmly addressing the bikers. He did not insult them, did not make threats, but he made it clear that their behavior was unacceptable. The bikers listened, though reluctantly, sensing that they could not simply ignore this authority. The boy felt a strange sense of pride. He had never imagined that someone would stand up for him so directly, and it gave him a sense of validation, a feeling that he mattered. One of the younger bikers finally stepped back, muttering under his breath. The leader's frustration was evident, but the man's calm demeanor did not waver. He continued to watch, ready to act if necessary, but also giving the bikers an opportunity to retreat without further conflict. The boy clutched his paper bag, feeling a wave of relief. It was not over yet, but the immediate threat seemed less pressing. The boy took a small step forward, feeling safer with the man nearby. He realized that he had been holding his breath for what felt like hours. Now he exhaled slowly, letting some tension leave his body. He looked at the bikers, seeing them hesitate, unsure of how to proceed. The boy understood that the situation had shifted, that the balance of power had changed. He was no longer just a helpless child. He had someone willing to fight for him. The leader of the bikers let out a frustrated sigh, looking at his companions. They had expected an easy target, someone they could intimidate without resistance. Now they were faced with unexpected courage and moral authority. The boy watched as they exchanged glances, clearly debating whether to continue or retreat. The presence of the man had made the difference, turning what could have been a frightening situation into a moment of empowerment. The boy felt a mix of relief and awe. He had never seen anyone handle such a situation with calm and strength. The man did not shout, did not use force unnecessarily, yet his presence alone was enough to hold the bikers at bay. The boy's confidence grew slightly, knowing that he had an ally who understood the danger and knew how to deal with it. Time seemed to slow down. The bikers shifted uneasily, the boy's heart raced, and the man remained steady, a pillar of calm strength. The boy held the paper bag tightly, feeling a sense of protection he had not known before. He realized that courage could be quiet, that strength did not always have to be loud, and that standing up for what is right could take many forms. The bikers, sensing that their intimidation was losing power, began to step back slowly, their laughter fading. The boy watched carefully, still cautious but feeling safer. He understood that this moment was not just about protecting his food, but about witnessing bravery, about learning that someone could make a difference by simply standing firm. The man's presence had changed everything. The biker's power had diminished, and the boy could feel that the worst might soon be over. He clutched the paper bag and took a steadying breath, knowing that he had survived the most frightening part of the encounter. The bikers hesitated, unsure of what to do next. The leader could feel the tension rising in his chest. He was not used to being challenged like this, and the man standing firmly between him and the boy made it clear that force alone would not be enough. The group exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that the situation was no longer simple. Their usual intimidation tactics were not working. The man's calm, steady presence had created a barrier they were not ready to cross. The boy clutched the paper bag, feeling his chest tighten but also feeling a growing sense of safety. He watched as the man took a deliberate step forward, making it clear that he was ready to act if necessary, but without aggression. It was a delicate balance, showing strength while avoiding escalation. The boy felt inspired. He had never seen someone handle a threatening situation with such quiet confidence. It made him believe that he could survive this encounter. The leader of the bikers tried to regain control. He spoke in a low, harsh tone, attempting to assert dominance. "You don't belong here," he said, his eyes narrowing. The man didn't flinch. He simply met the biker's gaze, steady and unwavering. His calm response seemed to throw the leader off. It was as if the man was saying without words that he would not allow injustice to continue. The boy could sense the tension in the air shifting, like a storm losing its force. One of the younger bikers, who had been less aggressive from the start, glanced at the others nervously. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The leader's authority over them was not enough to override the unease that the man's presence created. The boy noticed their hesitation and felt a small spark of courage. He had survived the first wave of fear, and now he could see that the bikers were uncertain, vulnerable in their own way. The man spoke again, his voice calm and firm. "Leave the boy alone," he said. There was no anger, no threat, only a clear statement of what was right. The bikers looked at each other, realizing that they could no longer rely on intimidation. Their laughter had faded, replaced by quiet uncertainty. The boy's heart beat faster, but it was different now. It was not just fear. It was hope mixed with relief. He could see that the man's words and presence were powerful, even without shouting or physical force. The leader scowled, clearly frustrated. He took a step back and looked at his companions. It was clear that they were debating what to do. The bikers had been used to taking what they wanted without resistance, but this time, the rules had changed. They could feel it, and it made them uneasy. The boy watched carefully, gripping the paper bag tighter, realizing that the moment of truth had arrived. The bikers had a choice: escalate or retreat. The man remained calm, his eyes on the group, his stance firm. He did not move aggressively, but the strength in his posture was unmistakable. The boy could feel the protection emanating from him, a shield that gave him courage. He had never experienced anything like this before. The man was not just standing up for him. He was showing the bikers that courage and justice mattered more than fear. The leader of the bikers let out a frustrated sigh. He tried one more time to intimidate the boy, but the effect was gone. The boy, holding the paper bag, did not flinch. He had seen the man's strength, and it gave him confidence. The bikers could no longer rely on fear to control the situation. They had underestimated the power of calm moral authority. The younger bikers began to step back, exchanging nervous glances. The leader looked at them, frustration clear on his face. He realized that the situation was slipping out of their control. The man's presence, his calm confidence, and his unwavering focus on protecting the boy had changed everything. The balance of power had shifted. The boy felt a surge of relief, knowing that the threat was diminishing. The boy's mind raced with thoughts. He thought about the mornings he had saved his coins, the afternoons he had worked quietly to earn small rewards. He realized that this moment was not just about his food, but about witnessing courage and justice in action. He understood that standing up for what is right could come in many forms. He felt inspired and proud, knowing that he had survived the initial fear and that the bikers were now hesitant. The man spoke again, calmly and firmly. "Walk away," he said. His words were simple, but their authority was undeniable. The bikers could feel the truth in them, the clarity of purpose that they could not match with threats or intimidation. The leader's frustration grew, but the boy noticed that he was also cautious. The bikers were beginning to retreat, understanding that their plan had failed. The boy felt his heart slow slightly. The immediate threat was passing thanks to the man who had stepped in. He clutched the paper bag, still trembling but feeling a growing sense of security. He looked at the bikers as they hesitated, taking one last glance at the man who had protected him. The boy felt grateful beyond words, realizing that sometimes courage came from unexpected places. The leader of the bikers muttered under his breath and waved his companions to follow. Slowly they began to back away, their laughter gone, replaced by quiet unease. The boy watched them leave, his chest rising and falling as he breathed more steadily. The man stayed close, ensuring that the bikers had truly left and that the boy was safe. The boy's hands, still clutching the bag, finally relaxed a little. He felt a sense of relief wash over him, knowing that the danger had passed. The boy looked at the man, wanting to say something, to thank him, but the words felt small compared to the enormity of what had just happened. The man smiled gently, a kind, reassuring expression that made the boy feel safe and understood. It was not just about physical protection. It was about showing that someone cared, that justice mattered, and that fear could be faced with calm strength. The boy realized that he had learned something important. He had seen courage in action, witnessed moral authority standing against intimidation. He understood that bravery could be quiet, and that standing up for what is right could make a difference. The bikers were gone, but the lesson remained. The boy felt inspired and empowered, knowing that even in the face of fear, help could come, and courage could prevail. The man stayed with the boy for a few moments longer, ensuring that he was fully safe and that the bikers were not returning. He did not make a big show of it, did not seek recognition or praise. He simply ensured that the boy was okay, that the threat had ended. The boy felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had not only kept his food, but he had also witnessed an act of true kindness and bravery. As the man finally turned to leave, the boy waved shyly, feeling a mix of relief, admiration, and inspiration. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting warm light through the trees. The boy clutched his paper bag once more, feeling both hunger and gratitude. He knew that this moment would stay with him forever. A story of fear overcome by courage, of justice standing firm against intimidation, and of a stranger who had made a difference when it mattered most. The boy sat on the bench for a while, taking slow, deep breaths. He opened the paper bag carefully, savoring the food he had worked so hard to earn. Each bite felt like a small victory, a reward for patience, perseverance, and courage. He thought about what had just happened and felt a new sense of understanding. Fear could be faced, courage could be found, and help could appear when it was needed most. The boy finished his meal slowly, enjoying every bite. He looked around the park, noticing the beauty he had missed in his initial fear. The trees swayed gently, birds chirped, and the sunlight glinted off the leaves. He realized that life continued, that fear and danger could appear unexpectedly, but that kindness and bravery could also appear in equal measure. The boy felt a deep sense of hope and a newfound appreciation for the strength of character he had witnessed. The lesson of the morning stayed with him. Courage does not always roar, and bravery can take many forms. He had seen a stranger step in and change the course of events with quiet confidence and moral authority. The boy understood that he could carry this lesson forward, that even small acts of courage could make a difference in the lives of others. He left the park that day feeling stronger, wiser, and more aware of the power of human kindness. The boy sat on the bench, still clutching his paper bag, feeling a mixture of relief, awe, and gratitude. The bikers had gone, their laughter and menacing presence replaced by the quiet sounds of the park. Birds chirped in the trees and the breeze gently rustled the leaves. The boy took a deep breath, finally allowing himself to relax after the intense fear he had felt. The presence of the man who had protected him still lingered in his mind, and he felt a deep sense of admiration. He had never imagined that someone could stand up to danger with such calm strength. He thought back to the moment when the bikers first approached him, how small and powerless he had felt. The fear had been overwhelming, making his hands shake and his heart race uncontrollably. He remembered how he had hugged the paper bag tightly, as if it were the only thing keeping him safe. Now he realized that it was not just the bag that mattered, but the courage to hold on, to resist, and the hope that someone might come to help. The boy took a careful bite of his sandwich, savoring the taste that he had worked so hard to earn. Each bite felt sweeter, not just because it was food, but because he had fought to protect it. The memory of fear made the simple meal feel like a victory, a reminder of resilience and the importance of standing up, even when it seemed impossible. He chewed slowly, reflecting on what had happened, and began to understand the deeper meaning behind the man's actions. The man who had come to his aid had not sought praise or recognition. He had simply acted because it was the right thing to do. The boy admired this, realizing that true bravery did not need an audience. It was quiet, steady, and purposeful. The boy understood that courage could manifest in many forms, and he had just witnessed an example that would stay with him for the rest of his life. He felt inspired to carry that lesson forward, to act with kindness and strength whenever the opportunity arose. He looked around the park, noticing the little details that had gone unnoticed in his fear. The sunlight glinted off the leaves, casting patterns of light and shadow on the ground. A few children played at a distance, their laughter bright and carefree. The boy realized that life continued, even in the face of fear, and that moments of danger could be met with unexpected kindness. The memory of the biker's cruel expression still lingered, but it was tempered by the knowledge that goodness and courage could appear just as unexpectedly. The boy's mind wandered to his parents and the lessons they had taught him. They had always emphasized the importance of integrity, of standing up for what is right and treating others with respect. Today he had seen those lessons come to life. He had seen a stranger act selflessly to protect someone vulnerable, and he had felt the power of courage and moral authority firsthand. It was a lesson far beyond anything he could have learned from books or lectures. He thought about the bikers now gone, and realized that fear and aggression often came from a place of uncertainty and weakness. The man's presence had revealed that their intimidation held no real power when met with quiet strength. The boy felt a small sense of triumph, not over the bikers themselves, but over the fear they had instilled. He had survived, protected his meal, and witnessed the importance of courage and morality. As he sat there, savoring the peace that had returned, he remembered the moment when the man had first approached. The calm, confident stride, the steady gaze, and the quiet authority had been enough to change the course of the entire encounter. The boy realized that true bravery did not always need to be loud or violent. It could be as simple as standing firm and making the right choice. He felt inspired, imagining himself growing up to act with the same quiet strength when faced with challenges. He glanced at the paper bag again, feeling grateful not just for the food inside, but for the lessons it had come to represent. Every bite now carried meaning beyond taste. It was a reminder of resilience, hope, and the power of human kindness. The boy reflected on how fear had felt like a heavy weight on his shoulders, and how courage, even from a stranger, had lightened that burden. He realized that bravery and compassion could create ripples of hope in moments of darkness. The boy slowly stood up, finishing the last of his sandwich and taking a few careful steps around the park. He noticed the familiar path he had walked earlier, now seeing it with fresh eyes. Everything seemed brighter, more alive, and he felt a connection to the world around him that he hadn't noticed before. The morning had brought fear and uncertainty, but it had also brought a profound sense of gratitude and inspiration. He understood that even ordinary moments could become extraordinary when met with courage and kindness.